Well, welcoming you on air. We have a lot of interaction, as you probably know, from text and from people that will flash. So if you, just to anyone that's listening at the moment, if you have a question that you would like to put to George Galloway, please text in. If you have any thoughts that you want to share, if you have any views you'd like to put across, we'll be happy to do that. Aisha and I have some questions that we think are pertinent to ask George as we have this wonderful opportunity to explore certain issues with him. The number that we'd like you to text in on is 0750 3388 694. And Aisha and I are going to be taking you through till 8 p.m. And we'll see how long we can detain George with us.
Indeed. So you mentioned there's a little matter of the election coming up, isn't there?
Yes,
indeed.
75 days from now.
Wow.
So we're not yet in the electoral period officially, but unofficially we definitely are.
In May you have the election, but you also have the Eurovision Song Contest, and I don't know which I'm more excited about personally. So, it's all about votes. It's controversial,
Null.
And then there's the election as well.
Well, we've just had quite a few text messages that are dropping into our inbox. First one says, Mr. Galloway rocks.
Thank you.
And they've not even heard you sing yet.
Well, I do sing. You can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
There's a series of my renditions of Bob Dylan songs.
Oh, really?
On YouTube,
Wow.
Is the answer blowing in the wind, though? That's the question for you tonight.
That's one of the songs, but there are others. But I'm not going to sing tonight. Okay. My voice is a little fragile, and I have to speak at a big rally tomorrow in Newcastle with Russell Brand.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Which is a counter demonstration to the anti-Muslim Pegida movement, which is inexplicably turned up in Newcastle from Berlin.
Why Newcastle?
I don't know why they've chosen Newcastle. Maybe it's to do with flights or ferries. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's an attempt to import into England the kind of hateful anti-Muslim bigotry and prejudice that they have been famous for in Germany. Now they've begun to fall apart in Germany as they were exposed as the fascists, Nazis that they are. So they're turning up in Newcastle. So Russell Brand and me and thousands of others will be marching and countering them.
And you're launching your campaign, your official election campaign as well tomorrow, we understand?
Tomorrow night is the official launch of my campaign in Lala's in Toller Lane. All welcome, but come early, 7 o'clock. Food and a feast of oratory.
Oh, there you go.
Feast of oratory, wow.
Love it. Yeah. Love it.
I think we might nick that sentence.
I think we might.
Feast of oratory and some great kebabs.
Sounds good. So what's the flavour like then on the streets? So obviously it's been almost 3 years, is it? Nearly now?
3 years,
since the Bradford Spring, as it was known?
Well, the truth is, at this moment in time, there is no election really, because the Labour Party have yet to choose a candidate, which you might think with just 75 days to go is quite extraordinary. It's the last constituency in the whole of Britain to choose a Labour candidate.
Yes, it's been quite an interesting week.
It has been. If you'd been interviewing me last Friday, the Labour candidate was being chosen the next day.
Yeah.
She was chosen the next day.
We had her for 3 days.
Yeah. And the last thing she ever said in Bradford, and I think ever will be the operative word, was, "George Galloway, I'm coming to get you." And then 3 days later she resigned in mysterious circumstances.
It was kebabs all over.
Well, so now they've had to start all over again. So in that sense, it's a bit of a phony war because I have the streets to myself. Because although there are other parties standing, they don't really have any big following. So it's really me versus the Labour Party, and the Labour Party has no candidate. So it's a bit of a phony war. But as I go around my business, my weekly surgery, my walking around the streets today at the university, for example, well, the response is overwhelming. So I'm more than quietly confident.
Yeah. I mean, it was a massive, massive victory for all sorts of reasons 3 years ago.
It was like something from God, really. It was a miracle. It came from nowhere in just 19 days, from zero to a 10,800 majority. It was historic, absolutely historic. And it felt like being on the crest of a wave, you know. You're no longer in control of it. You're not actually doing anything anymore to generate it. The wave's power is carrying you.
Yeah.
And let's hope it, for my sake anyway, that it continues in May.
Had you even ever been to Bradford before that?
I had, but only as a speaker. I had a share in a back-to-back in Manningham, which my parliamentary assistant had bought at a really knockdown price after the riots. So I had a share in that back-to-back, and I did stay in it when I came to Bradford to give speeches, which I did relatively regularly, but it was arriving in the evening, giving a speech, sleeping overnight in the back-to-back in Manningham, and then back to London the next day. But as soon as I knew there was a parliamentary vacancy, well, I knew that this was a marriage made in heaven, because I had a lot of support in Bradford. That I knew, and I was temporarily out of Parliament. So it was a perfect match.
Yeah, why was it that your opposition was so, talking about kind of taking advantage of the Muslim vote, etc., but surely you're going to go to where you're going to have natural support and people understand what you're saying and you understand them.
David Cameron stands for election in an area in Oxfordshire full of rich people, because he knows that rich people are quite likely to vote for him. I tend to get my votes from poorer people. Many of those poorer people are from the minority ethnic communities, but by no means all. As it happened, in that by-election, I won in every single ward, whether predominantly Asian or predominantly non-Asian, whether student-based around the city ward, the university ward as it used to be called, or whether inner city, Toller and Manningham. I won the count in every single ward. So this was just tosh. They had to explain away how come me, who they told you for decades was a dangerous radical that nobody supported, how come I won such a stunning victory, historic victory? So they had to come up with something, and quick, overnight. So they came up with this canard that it was the Muslim vote, as if Muslim votes were second-class votes, different to other votes. Muslim votes are worth exactly the same as any other vote, and that's the way we look at it anyway.
Just had a couple of more text messages. A number ending in 717 says, "Welcome to the legendary George Galloway."
How nice. It's very, very kind to hear these things, I must say.
And also had a text here from Peter that says, "Hi guys, looking forward to your show, and we hope that you have a great interview."
Well, it's with some trepidation I come in front of you, because I'm told that although you're great fun, you're also two very sharp women. So I'm waiting for some...
Listen, well, firstly, we're not on the parliamentary candidate shortlist.
No.
So.
Not yet.
I'm not sure anybody is.
We're not on any shortlist, actually, are we? We've not worked very hard this year, have we, Aisha?
Well, if you'd put your names in, you would definitely have been shortlisted, because no disrespect or anything, but...
Yeah, then my mum would just have one thing to say to that. Who will marry you now? So that could be really difficult for me, but... Yeah. I wanted to ask a question, George. I wanted to ask you, I mean, you're very vocal about the Palestinian issue.
Yes.
And it's very, in some quarters it's not liked, in some quarters it's revered as very brave. But the fact of the matter is you address those issues in a public domain, and we saw on Question Time a few weeks ago how that was received, and in very many other situations. What is it about that issue that you are able to articulate that other politicians do not address?
Well, firstly, because I'm not afraid of the consequences, because I have no career as such. I have only a seat in Parliament, which those who hate me for this stand, cannot take away from me. I don't want anything from them. I don't want office, I don't want riches, I don't want honours, I don't want titles. So I want nothing from them, and nothing that I have that I value, they can take away from me. So I'm not afraid, that's the first point. Secondly, there is nothing that they know about the Palestine question that I don't know. I am as close as you'll get to the absolute expert on this subject, because I first took it up in 1975. That is 40 years ago. So for 40 years I've been arguing this case. I know everything about it. I'm not afraid to proselytize for it. So what's not to love? If you're on the side of the oppressor, if you're on the side of the occupier, you'll hate me. If you're on the side of the oppressed, if you're on the side of the occupied, you'll like me, at least on that subject. You may hate me on many others, but you'd have to, I think, concede that at this moment in time, by the grace of God, there is nobody in Britain ready to do so and able to do so, make the case for Palestine.
Why do our politicians bury their heads in the sand? It might be an obvious question, but again and again and again. Question time again last night. A lady dared to raise the root causes of some of the horrible things that are happening at the moment across the world. She said the two words foreign policy and that was it. She was shouted down. You know, what is it about our politicians? You know, they're there to represent us, they're there to represent justice, and yet we don't see that on any level. And
absolutely, just to follow on from what you're saying, Aisha, a lot of our local councillors won't publicly address the issue, and they are from all walks of life, all races, all religions. And what is it about this issue that makes them feel so afraid?
Well, I recognise what happened to that lady last night because I was in my constituency then in Bethnal Green and Bow on 7/7/2005, and I saw the bloodied, broken and dead being brought up from the underground station at Aldgate East. I went to the Royal London Hospital. I saw the nurses and the doctors and the porters triaging people, those who were already dead, those who could be saved, and so on. And I went directly from that scene into the House of Commons. And I rose. And of course I said, what happened this morning in London was an act of atrocious, foul, mass murder, which has to be condemned by every person, whatever their faith or none. Secondly, I said, the primary responsibility for this crime is with the criminals themselves, some of whom came from round about here. These criminals must take primary responsibility. But there's a secondary responsibility. The people who have set the world on fire, the people who have terrorized the world with their shock and awe and their cruise missiles and their bombs. You see, I said, I'm against terror, whether it's carried out by a man with a turban in the Tora Bora, or whether it's carried out by a man in a suit in the White House or Whitehall. And that's the difference between me and you. I said, well, the sky fell down upon me. It was as if I had planted these bombs. But you know what? Within a couple of days, the whole country was in agreement that the backdrop to these kind of terrorist atrocities cannot be ignored. Otherwise, you're not actually ever going to solve this problem. If you pretend it's only about psychotic, psychopathic individuals, then you're never going to solve it. Of course, it is about psychotic. It is about psychopathic individuals, but it takes place in a context. And that context is that swamp that lady last night on Question Time was trying to bring up. A swamp of grievance and hatred and bitterness which is being sowed daily by the actions of governments like our own and the government of the United States, the government of Israel, the government of France, and so on. If you ignore that, then you can feel all self-righteous and all, denouncing this terrorist or that terrorist, but you're never going to solve the problem.
The other thing that was raised was last night, and I'm sorry to bring back to that, but this whole issue with Jihadi John and the whole these three girls that went off to Syria a few weeks ago. Are they victims? Are they terrorists? How can you call a 15-year-old a terrorist when in any other scenario where they were being groomed, because that's what was being done, they would be the victim? Because it's so complex, isn't it?
You have to separate these two cases. These girls are victims. So-called Jihadi John is a terrorist, a murderer, cold-blooded, torturing, mutilating, head-chopping murderer. Now, of course, it's of some sociological interest how he got there. But he wasn't a poor boy. He didn't come from the mean streets. He lived in an £800,000 house. He was university educated. He was educated at one of the best schools in London. He had a degree. He had a future ahead of him. So he didn't get to where he is because of the normal economic and social alienation that pushes some other people in that direction. So no doubt that's of interest. But for now, my thoughts are with those whose fathers he murdered.
Yes.
That's my priority.
Because it can never be justified, that kind of violence, in any shape or form, can it?
Not justified in Islam. Yeah. It's completely un-Islamic to butcher a helpless prisoner who's in your hands and at your mercy is a completely un-Islamic thing to do.
And of course, in those cases, most of those people that they've brutally murdered have been out there to help the Syrian cause, to help the Syrian people. They've been...
Well, some of them were, Some of them, I forget now which of them, but one of the British aid workers who was butchered had actually driven an ambulance all the way there to try and help the victims of the war in Syria. So, no, I have zero tolerance for this so-called ISIS. But these girls, 15-year-old girls, there are a number of issues arise from that. How come it's so easy for 3 15-year-old girls with no parent or guardian with them to get on a Turkish Airlines flight to fly to Turkey when everybody and their dog in the whole world knows that that's the route into ISIS-controlled Syria and Iraq?
And apparently they had a single ticket and they didn't check in any luggage.
Well, I didn't know that. That makes it even more absurd.
Do you think there's a sense of collective...
Was there no police officers? Were there no policemen on the desk at the airline going to Turkey? Hello?
It does raise some very serious issues and very serious concerns.
And these families have now lost their daughters. I mean, God forbid that they're directly killed in airstrikes or whatever. But whether killed or not, these daughters are lost. They'll be married already to some fanatic terrorist fighter, and they left their families as 15-year-old schoolgirls, and almost certainly they're already married women to someone they don't know who's been allocated, to whom they've been allocated, as if they were prize animals.
We're just going to go to another couple of text messages and we're going to take a very short commercial break, after which I think we'll return, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about the whole process of how the media interpretation is of how young people, like the 3 girls we've mentioned, become involved in these kind of situations. And what, there's been a lot in the media and also happening politically around, well, is it to do with the mosques? Should the communities be doing well? There's a bit of ping pong going on around where the responsibility lies. But I wanted to have more of a discussion around the online aspect of how these situations manifest. But before we do that, let's just go to a couple of text messages. Salams, George, nice to hear you on Fever Airwaves.
Great.
That's number ending in 756. And he's definitely with the fever at the moment. Also, one of your constituents have texted in to say, Salam, George, what are your plans for Bradford West if you win? And then they go on to say, the streets need cleaning, potholes need filling.
Good on them. That's the kind of question. That's it.
Isn't it? All right,
we're going to account.
Yes. Right, we're going to take a couple of minutes break, let you get your breath back. We'll make you a nice drink. And we're going to hear some of our messages from our sponsors. Also, we had flashes in from people like Selma Diamond, who's tuned in from Leeds. Thank you, Selma, for flashing in and letting us know that you're tuned in and listening. Number ending in 290, big shout out to you. Waqas from Bradford also flashed in, as did Javed Bhai from Beeston, Leeds, and Haji Mahmood Qadri. Also, we had Shahzad and Javad from Hales and Bradford flash in too. Guys, lovely to know that you're tuned in. Stay tuned. We're going to be back shortly after this in conversation with George Galloway.
Your hit station. Keep it real. Keep it Vivo. Viva FM. Iman Suhaib Webb is coming to a city near you to inspire, to enlighten, to remind you that even the smallest good deed can make a huge difference. So join this exciting world-renowned speaker in support of our Syria Not Forgotten appeal. Don't miss out. Book now. Tickets cost only £5. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
When it comes to hair removal, the Beauty Wardrobe is a name you can trust. With over 14 years experience, now introducing Soprana Ice, the most effective laser hair removal solution in the world. Virtually painless, with no side effects and treats all skin types. For a limited period only, buy 4 Soprana hair removal treatments and get 4 treatments absolutely free. Book your free consultation now on 01274 200 016 or visit www.thebeautywardrobe.com/laser.
तमाम प्राइवेट हायर और हैकनी कैरेज ड्राइवर्स के लिए खुसूसी ऐलान मिस्टर कॉम्पेंसेटर अब 3,000 पाउंड रेफरल फी आपको दे रहे हैं हैरान कुन है ना मिस्टर कॉम्पेंसेटर अब हर टैक्सी हायर क्लेम पर 3,000 पाउंड रेफरल फी दे रहे हैं इसके अलावा सिर्फ 2 घंटों के अंदर अंदर मुतबादिल ब्रांड न्यू टैक्सी भी हासिल कीजिए लार्ज फ्लीट और प्रेस्टीज एंड 4x4 व्हीकल्स फॉर स्टैंडर्ड क्लेम्स 100% guaranteed compensation or 24/7 service please call now on 0113-894-0001 referral fee payable for higher claims only. Terms and conditions apply. Mr. Compensator.
क्रैशी जी किथे जा रहे हो सूट बूट पाके
मैं आकाश रेस्टोरेंट ते जा रहा हां जिथे हर दिन 54 किस्म दे ताजे ते मजेदार खाने बनदे ने ते हर जुमेराती पूरा बकरा स्पेशल बनाया जांदा है शादी होवे सालगिरह होवे ते भावें अपनी फैमिली होवे आकाश रेस्टोरेंट जदों भी आओगे बड़ा ही मजा पाओगे
buffet from $11.95 for adults and half price for children free car parking just off the M62 junction 26 for bookings call Bradford 878866.
Akash, passion for excellence.
Akash. If you've suffered personal injury, a road traffic accident, or slip or trip at work, call North One Solicitors. Unlike other companies, we guarantee 100% compensation. North One Solicitors, a Lexel accredited firm, offer a quality, professional service. And with helpful staff fluent in Urdu, Punjabi and English, you know we speak your language. Call Leeds 249-8478 or visit North One Solicitors, 240 Roundhay Road, Leeds. Make North One Solicitors your number one choice.
दिल चीज है क्या जाना ये जान भी तुम्हारी है
उफ हो तुम्हारी जान का मैं क्या अचार डालूंगी अगर कुछ करना है तो मुझे ले चलो यूनिक बुटीक जो कि सिर्फ नाम के नहीं बल्कि स्टाइल के भी यूनिक है they have latest bridal wear and party wear designer saris lehengas and suits unstitched suits and fashion jewelry 1252 Leeds Road Bradford call Bradford 661232
कामयाब लोगों की नायाब पसंद यूनिक बुटीक
The head teacher says I'm not allowed to take the kids out of school to go and visit the family.
You're not allowed now, though, are you? They say the kids miss too much at school and it's too hard for them to catch up.
Really?
Yeah, I took mine away for 4 weeks last year. It was a nightmare when we got back.
Why is that?
Well, they got way behind with their schoolwork. One of them missed some important tests. Another was feeling left out and found it really hard to get back with their friends. Loads of upset. And then there was a £60 fine for each child.
Well, when you put it like that, maybe we should wait till the school holidays.
Every school day matters. If you're taking your child away, make it during a school holiday.
ओ प्रभु का है कि यहाँ पिट रहा है
मरी गया वहाँ प्रभु टैक्सी भजी गई है तू की दिसना कोई नहीं उन खर्चे को तू पूरे करसा ता बिटना
ओ जे तुम्हारी गलती नहीं ना ते होनी फास्ट ट्रैक सॉल्यूशन लिमिटेड वाले को जा जिथु केस रिफेरल वाले की अप टू 3,000 पाउंड ते तू की प्लेटेड कार लबसिया अप टू 1,000 पाउंड पर्सनल इंजरी लोन भी लबी सकना ते प्राइवेट यूज कार वास्ते 500 पाउंड देने नहीं ते और सुन 100% कंपनसेशन डायरेक्ट कंपनी नी तरफ से लबसिया और का लोन है
पता
Fast Track Solutions Limited need new agents or referrals. Phone Shaquille anytime on 07977317760.
Are you looking for a job and need help? Don't know where to start? At the job shops, our qualified and experienced staff will help to look at your job choices and identify any training or work opportunities. Prepare your CV, support you with application forms, and offer advice and guidance to prepare you for interviews. We have 9 job shops across the city, including the Regional Centre, the Compton Centre, and Dewsbury Road One-Stop Centre. Call Debbie Smith on 07891270652 or visit leeds.gov.uk/job shop. Over the last year, we've helped nearly 4,000 people into work. Let us help you.
Yorkshire's #1 Asian station.
Hi guys.
This is Fever FM.
Okay, guys, welcome back to Radio Asian Fever, broadcasting on 107.3 FM. You're tuned in to the Bindi Bangin Express, joined by a very special guest. We're in conversation with George Galloway. George, welcome to our show.
It's been fantastic.
Thank you for joining us. George has been with us since just after 6, and we've locked the studio door. And did I say that out loud? And we're quizzing George about various different issues that we know are relevant and important to us as a listenership, but also as people who are thinking about which way to vote leading up to the general election. And of course, George, not just to do with your political career, but also to do with the fact that you are a public figure who is very outspoken. Just before the commercial break, Aisha and I were talking to you about the issue of John, the terrorist, who is in all the news headlines today, the 3 young women who have, through Turkey, made their way to Syria. And we wanted to move the conversation along a little bit now to talk about how these matters happen and what role social media plays and what your views are on that.
Well, it's a good question and endlessly debated in Parliament and in the media, and I promise you I will come to it. But it's vital that we don't fall for the government and mass media propaganda that if only we ban this or that cleric, if only we proscribe this or that Islamic organization, if only we will put filters on the internet that will solve this problem. There may be a case for doing all 3 of those things, but unless you also do the 4th, which I talked about before the break, change our ways. You see, if we go on invading and occupying Muslim countries, if we go on supporting the oppressors of the Palestinian people rather than the victims, the Palestinians themselves, if we go on propping up every tyrant, every puppet president, every corrupt king that rule the Muslim world almost without exception from one end to the other, then this swamp that I talked about will continue to deepen.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how many controls you put on the internet, how many, or I put it this way, if you're sitting beside a swamp, no matter how many fly swats you invest in, you will never stop what's coming out of that swamp. You have to drain the swamp. But, as I promised to deal with your question, I shall. There is no doubt that there is, amongst the Muslim Ummah, here in Britain and around the world, a proportion of extremists, fanatics, who are seeking to lure onto the rocks of separatism and violence and self-incineration, because that's where it ends. That kind of person exists. Even that kind of organization exists, but they are very small. Look, we all know, and I've spent more than 40 years, 45 years, moving constantly in the Muslim milieu. The number of fanatic extremists is very small. Of course, only needs a small number to blow themselves up and give the rest of the community such a bad name that all kinds of hatred and bigotry and discrimination then comes down on their heads. The number of people involved in the atrocity in France, for example, last month or the month before, was very small. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 people out of 8 million Muslims in France. But it's the rest of the 8 million who are now having to pay the price of the actions of those 5. So, I take the view, we must root out the small number of extremists. We must oppose them, confront them, theologically, ideologically, philosophically. We have to confront them. But it can't stop there, because if you banned every fanatic cleric, if you proscribed every organization, if you made it impossible for people to reach this or that site on the internet, the only thing that you require to be radicalized as a Muslim in the West is the ability to switch on the TV news. And then you see all the crimes that are being committed, and hey, you suddenly feel very radical. I'm not against people feeling radical. I've spent my whole life trying to make people feel radical. But the best way, the best way to be radical is not to blow yourself up, blow up other people, kill, separate yourself from people. The best way to be radical is to link arms with others who are feeling the same way as you are, about the injustice in the world, whatever their faith, whatever their colour, link up with them and do something to actually change things rather than simply destroy. Now we're getting flashes everywhere. Abid in Hyde Park. He's the latest flasher.
Indeed.
Oh, he's going to be so happy. He's going to be so
Abid,
happy.
welcome. Thanks for that flash.
We also had a number ending in 142 who flashed us just a little while ago.
Yeah, we just don't know the name.
So,
but whoever that was, ending in 142, welcome.
Well, there you go. They're all going now.
That's
My
it now.
goodness, there's Mohammed in Leeds. Fantastic. This is a great system. When I was on the radio, there was nothing called flashing. Chaudhry Jahangir, would that be?
It is.
Afshak Sab, Faiz Sab, Muhammad, Chaudhry Jahangir, Abid, Salma Diamond, Amir Arshad, Raja Sajid Bashir, Pudzi, Amar of Jaspur. My goodness. We could do this all night. Alia, Fever Crew, Ali of Mirpur.
We could indeed.
Is he really calling from Mirpur?
No, he's just registered from Mirpur, but he's actually
Subhanallah,
from...
really. We're being
It's a suburb of Leeds,
We're being
Mirpur.
listened to in Mirpur.
I got to just shout out some of these text messages. Number ending in 743 says, "Love you, George."
Very nice, thank you.
And it says, "Keep up the good work." And that's from Fayaz in Armley. Also had a message here that says, "Great to hear George speaking. Clear, informative and educating too. Puts things across very well. Thanks," from Maurice in Wakefield.
Excellent.
Wakefield.
Not Wakefield, no, Wakefield. My hometown.
Private joke. My 7-year-old thought it was pronounced Wakefield. I told him, no, that's something out of The Sopranos. Yeah.
And he watches The Sopranos.
Yeah, where you go to get whacked. Field.
Excellent. Okay, well, we are going to continue in our conversation, of course, with you. I think just wanting to bring the conversation back to, I mean, obviously, we know that the online grooming side of things has a very big influence on people that have gone and fought for ISIS.
Yeah.
And we know that from cases all around the world, particularly in the West.
Yeah.
Do you have a view on what that is and what should be done about it?
Well, look, Jihadi John is a different case.
Yes.
But if we take these three girls living in a country where Islam is being painted as a dirty word, where the hijabs that they wore were being routinely described as a provocation to others rather than a choice made by them. In this country, you're free to wear as little as you like, but some people don't think you have the freedom to wear as much as you like, which is particularly ironic. So these girls grew up in a country where their government was making war against Muslims abroad, and their media and some of their politicians seemed intent upon war on them. So they started a process of alienation. Along comes somebody apparently offering an answer, a caliphate, where people can live as Muslims, and so on. And this becomes a magnet. The problem was, nobody was talking to these girls, pointing out that this so-called caliphate is actually a heart-eating, head-chopping, mass-murdering obscenity. It's a blasphemy against Islam, not the expression of Islam. It's the opposite of Islam. Islam does not permit the mass murder of innocent people, hostages, prisoners, the destruction of churches, the destruction of religious places, tombs, for example.
Yeah, that's been in the news today, hasn't it?
Have been desecrated. The priceless museum in Mosul, in Iraq, its antiquities have just been systematically destroyed by these people. None of this has anything to do with Islam. These girls were not taught that. So either their parents or their school or their mosque, if they were allowed into their mosque, has challenged the attraction that this ISIS has begun to exercise over young people all over the world, not just here. 500 from Britain, we say, but 1,500 from France.
And we don't know how many are currently perhaps in that process now.
No, we don't. The 500 is an estimate of the security services, but it could be 500, it could be much more than that. It's very dangerous because these people won't be coming back. The police, if they catch them, will throw them into prison for many years.
And we've seen a case just last week, the young man who came back, and he's now in prison for, I think, 16 years.
Yes. And so they'll either come back for long prison terms or they'll die there.
Just got to turn to the text messages because they're going a bit crazy. If you are going to text in, please put your name on your text message so I can refer to you with your name rather than the last 3 digits of your phone number. Number ending in 310 says, "Hi everyone, especially to the legend George."
Thank you.
This is no reflection on his age. He is a man that stands out from others in politics because of his courage and fearless words. Truly appreciate his company on media.
How very kind. Thank you very much. I'm not afraid, you see. I think that's the difference between me and most of the politicians. As I always say, I'm afraid only from God. And if you fear only God, then first of all, you fear no man or woman. And secondly, you try to act in a way that will please God, because you believe there's a judgment day. You believe you have to answer for what you did and what you didn't do. That's bound to make you do better.
Which leads very nicely onto a question that's been asked on text. Number ending in 811 says, "Hi, can you please ask George Galloway his religion?"
I believe in God, and that's all I want to say about it. And because I believe in God, I believe in the judgment day. And I try to conduct my life in a way that will give me a better chance on the judgment day.
Inshallah, as they might say.
And then the text message that came in straight after that said, "George Galloway Zindabad."
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you understand that?
Yes. Long live.
There you go.
Inshallah.
Vive la George.
I've got a 7-month-old baby who's sitting outside the studio now, so he keeps me young, I must say.
Aww.
Just in terms of those 3 girls that we were talking about, this whole kind of demonization, this journey to the demonization of the Muslim community, and it is that, we can't deny that, can we, George? It's there. And, the politicians might pay lip service to the things they're doing to counter, but there's something nasty brewing across the country. You feel it when you read newspaper forums blaming Muslims for any old thing. It's so counterproductive what some of the government is doing. Where did this start? Because up to 20 years ago or so, we were fine, we were integrated, there was no problem. Something somewhere went drastically wrong, didn't it?
Well, Asha, the dreaded news is that it's not confined to here. We can only influence here, but anywhere you go in Europe or North America, you see the same thing. You saw the 3 young professional Muslims, a man and wife of only 6 weeks, and the wife's sister put down on their knees and murderously executed at point blank range by someone who hated religion, all religion as it happens. This was described in the US media as a dispute over a parking spot, whilst a similar thing, if it had happened here and had been carried out by a Muslim, would have been the number 1 news as a hate crime, as an Islamic terrorist crime, all over the media, and until now, weeks and weeks later. So trouble is brewing, in your words, and we have to stick together. We have to box clever. We have to have courage. There's no point in running. If you don't run, they can't chase you. In any case, there's nowhere to hide. People know who the Muslims are, either because they look like Muslims, or they go to the mosque, or their children go to Quran class, Arabic class, or whatever. So it's not as if it can be hidden. So we have to have courage, have faith in God, but box clever. We've got to find the language to express the position we want to defend in a way that will attract people to us, not in a way that will drive them further away from us. Divide and rule. That's the tactic of the enemy for centuries or millennia. We need to do the opposite. We need to unite people. So we have to conduct ourselves in a way that is understandable and attractive to people. We have to stress the good things about Islam, about the Muslims, about how long the Muslims have been here, about the fact that all of this is a relatively recent occurrence of ugliness. And I'll tell you when it started, because I predicted that it would. In the run-up to the Iraq War, I said, and the movement, the Stop the War movement said, if you make war against Muslims abroad, you will end up at war with Muslims at home. You can't pump the airwaves full of hatred of the Muslim over there and expect the idiots amongst your own community here in Britain not also to hate the Muslim down the street, the Muslim who runs the shop, the Muslim who serves them in the restaurant, or takes their fare on the bus, or works as a doctor in their hospital in the NHS. If you are constantly telling people negative things about Muslims, about Islam, in order to fuel your wars abroad, you're going to end up with blowback at home, and that's exactly what we've done.
And of course, playing off, you said it exactly, divide and rule. Old, through millennia, that's how these, those in power have worked.
60,000 British ruled then 600 million people in India, which is now India, Pakistan and Bangladesh.
Yeah, and the Kashmir issue still remains. They left that little bit,
60,000 ruled 600 million. How do you do that? Only by dividing and ruling.
Do you know what depresses me? Absolutely. I mean, heartbreakingly, that we've been through it before, history repeating itself. I mean, when you start comparing 1930s Nazi Germany with what's happening, people just laugh it off. They're like, what are you talking about? It's idiotic. But surely, can't we see that we're travelling that same path?
Well,
has the oppressor turned aggressor?
Well, we may not go, and let's pray and work that we don't go as far down that path as we sometimes fear. But that we're on the same path is undeniable. Let's take these so-called cartoons. Nazi propaganda began by caricaturing Jews. They called them posters, hate posters, in a newspaper, first of all, called Der Stürmer, which was a filthy Nazi anti-Semitic rag that ran cartoons strikingly similar to the cartoons of the Prophet that were being run across different publications in Europe, but most notably and tragically, as it turned out, in Charlie Hebdo in Paris. The caricaturing of a community starts with the depiction, ugly depiction of them in a cartoon, and ends with attacks upon them and upon their property and upon their right to be here and their right to follow their religion. That's what happened with the Jews in the 1930s. Now it's happening with the Muslims 90 years later.
Yeah, and it is just heartbreaking when you see it happening little by little, because there is something nasty bubbling. As I was saying before, whenever you read certain newspapers, forums, but even I work for the Yorkshire Evening Post as my day job, and sometimes there'll be a story which the fact that there's a Muslim mentioned in it or something will just be completely arbitrary. It will be like a side issue. However, people will pick up on that, and it will suddenly become an anti-Muslim rant. And I just don't understand. I don't understand where it comes from.
Well, anybody who follows I have almost 1 million followers on Twitter and Facebook, and a lot of time is spent, not really by me because I don't have the time, but a lot of time has to be spent deleting and blocking the perpetrators of exactly that kind of hate. And so, look, we've got a lot of good people in Britain. The vast majority of people in Britain are not like that. But we have a lot of people who are like that.
The nasty ones are the ones that often that shout the loudest. That's just the way it is.
Empty vessels make most noise.
If you've just joined us, you're tuned into Fever FM on 107.3. We're in conversation with George Galloway.
Yorkshire's number one. Yorkshire's number one Asian station. Fever FM.
Okay then, guys, still time for you to ask your questions of George Galloway. You can drop me a text on 07503388694. Please put your name on the text message. We've had loads and loads and loads of messages of support and just people really appreciating, George, you being on air and communicating in such a clear way. We've had a text message all the way from Barcelona from one of our listeners who says, I admire you for your good work, George. you're a winner. Now then, he's put something in Italian, and I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but I'm going to give it a go. It says, "Testimo molto."
Many testimonies, I think. Many good testimonies. Thank you very much.
Greetings from Barcelona. That's from somebody called Reza.
Wow.
As you can see, our reach is global here on Radio Asian Fever.
Yeah.
The fever is spread worldwide.
Cool, yeah.
Loads of messages flooding in. Shoaib says, "Can we speak to George?" Well, we will consult and let you know over the next few minutes. Number ending in 780 says, "I don't have words to say about George, but just to say he's a great leader."
Thank you very much. It's very, very
You're going to get a big head, George, after this appearance.
No. I'm humbled by it.
I think there's a song in the next one. In this next text, it says, "George, just wanted to say, you're simply the best."
Well, let's hope that's carried through on polling day.
Yes, and talking of polling day, let's bring it back to what matters ultimately. Bradford, you're a constituent holder.
Really?
You need to. I'm one of your constituents.
Excellent.
I sit before you very humbly.
Well, I have a surgery every Saturday morning, so if I can ever help you with
Thank
anything.
you so much.
And you never know where these things are going to lead to, because when I was a Member of Parliament in Glasgow, a man who was studying at Glasgow Caledonian University came in with a housing case to my surgery.
Oh.
And I did everything I could and got him a council flat in a high-rise, for which he was very grateful, though actually it wasn't a very nice high-rise, and it was quite easy to get a flat there. Anyway, that man is now the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Wow.
And he has never forgotten that I got him a council house in Glasgow. And he passed the message to me that he had never forgotten it. And I told him that...
see that one coming.
No, exactly. He owes me a council flat in Tehran.
Well, there you are. So, that'll be all over the Nationals tomorrow.
Yeah. I got a council house in Glasgow for the now President Rouhani when he was doing his PhD.
You know what they'll link it to, don't you? They'll link it to parliamentary expenses.
Yeah, well, no, it was
influence.
It was my duty as his Member of Parliament. So my point is, every Saturday morning, I'm sitting there at my office, 2 Grattan Road, BD1, and the public come in their hundreds, actually. I've done something like 2,500 surgery cases in 3 years.
Yeah.
I didn't get them all a house, and not all of them will become president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But what I do is my best for everybody. For example, let me give you the good news that Murphy, the husky, who was stolen in Bradford, which is the dog snatching capital of Britain, has just been returned from the RSPCA in Manchester. He's been found and he's been returned to his family. Now, I've been campaigning on this for weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Bring Murphy home.
Getting to the heart of the matter, George.
By the grace of God, he's back home with his family tonight.
Oh, fantastic stuff.
That's wonderful. That's really great. We're about 20 seconds away from the national and international news headlines, and then straight after that we'll be back. And George, we'd like to invite you to stay a bit longer if you can.
Yes, the only parameter is my rumbling tummy, because I haven't eaten, and there's a kebab shop across the road.
I was going to say, we know you have a liking for kebabs.
I do. I'm a kebab man, yeah.
Right,
all right then. Now. Okay, well, we're going to take a break for the news. We'll be back straight after this.
Nimoy, best known as Mr. Spock from Star Trek, has died at the age of 83. Barry Weir reports.
He won generations of fans with his role as the half-Vulcan first officer of the Starship Enterprise.
Live long and prosper.
The star died after suffering from lung disease. He didn't always speak highly of the role he got in the mid-60s, but he did return for cameos in the recent Star Trek revamps. He was also a director, poet and singer. His last tweet on Monday was a poignant one. It said, "A life is like a garden. Perfect moments can be had, but not preserved, except in memory."
Former glam rock singer Gary Glitter has been jailed for 16 years after being convicted of historical sex attacks on 3 schoolgirls. A judge said he'd shown no atonement for what he'd done. Sir Cliff Richard's lawyers have criticised a committee of MPs for publishing a letter about the police investigation into allegations against the singer. It emerged earlier this week that it had expanded in size. The 74-year-old strongly denies any wrongdoing. The Prime Minister's defended the security services as they face criticism for not revealing what what they knew about the Islamic State killer known as Jihadi John.
I think they are incredibly impressive, hard-working, dedicated, courageous and effective at protecting our country. All of the time, they're having to make incredibly difficult judgments, and I think basically they make very good judgments on our behalf.
The militant's been widely identified as Mohammed Emwazi from West London. David Cameron insists Britain will do everything it can to track down those who've committed terrorist acts. The Conservatives and Lib Dems say plans by Labour to slash university tuition fees in England haven't been properly costed and are unachievable. Ed Miliband's announced he wants to reduce them from £9,000 to £6,000 a year. And the price of first and second class stamps is increasing by a penny. Royal Mail says they'll rise to 63 and 54 pence respectively from the end of March. That's the latest. I'm Tom Harrigan.
It's number one. Yorkshire's number one Asian station. Fever FM.
Fever FM invites you to our birthday party, celebrating 8 years of service to the local community and launching the most exciting new platform, Fever TV Leeds. Members will be able to watch their favourite presenters and special guests. Also upload videos to share and win fantastic prizes for Video of the Month. Come on down and meet your favourite presenters. Check out Fever Studios and record a message on Fever TV. Also balloons and wonderful hot food for everyone. A family fun day out at Fever FM on Sunday, the 8th of March from 2 p.m. Roundhay Road, Leeds, LSA 4HS.
ओ प्रभु का है कि यहाँ पिट रहा है
मरी गया वहाँ प्रभु टैक्सी भजी गई है तू की दिसना कोई नहीं उन खर्चे को तू पूरे करसा ता बिटना
ओ जे तुम्हारी गलती नहीं ना ते होनी फास्ट ट्रैक सॉल्यूशन लिमिटेड वाले को जा जिथु केस रिफेरल वाले की अप टू 3000 पाउंड ते तू की प्लेटेड कार लबसिया अप टू 1000 पाउंड पर्सनल इंजरी लोन भी लबी सकना है ते प्राइवेट यूज कार वास्ते 500 पाउंड देने नहीं ते और सुन 100% कंपनसेशन डायरेक्ट कंपनी नी तरफ से लबसिया और का लोन है
पता
Fast Track Solutions Limited need new agents or referrals. Phone Shaquille anytime on 07977317760.
It's winter time at Home Farm. The animals are coming in from the fields and snuggling down in the barn and waiting for you to come see them. At Home Farm, we have cows and sheep. We've got goats and chickens and loads more amazing characters. At Home Farm, there's something for everyone. Home Farm at Temple Museum, a great day out for the family, and it's just a few minutes up the road.
ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਿਮਾਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਬਿਹਤਰੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਐਂਟੀਬਾਇਓਟਿਕਸ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਖੰਘ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜ਼ੁਕਾਮ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਾਂ ਗਲੇ ਦੀ ਖਰਾਬੀ ਨੂੰ ਠੀਕ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਗਲਤ ਦਰਖਤ ਤੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਚੜ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾਤਰ ਖੰਘ ਜ਼ੁਕਾਮ ਜਾਂ ਗਲੇ ਦੀ ਖਰਾਬੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਹੀ ਠੀਕ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਚੰਗੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਤੇ ਆਰਾਮ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਪੈਰਾਸੀਟਾਮੋਲ ਵੀ ਲੈ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਆਪਣਾ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖੋ ਐਂਟੀਬਾਇਓਟਿਕਸ ਨਾ ਲਓ
Urgent announcement to private hire and Hackney carriage taxi drivers. Mr. Compensator is paying up to £3,000 referral fee for taxi hire claims. Yes, Mr. Compensator is paying up to £3,000 referral fee for taxi hire claims. Brand new replacement taxis delivered within 2 hours. Large fleet of Prestige on 4x4 vehicles for standard claims. 100% compensation guaranteed. 24/7 service. Call now on 0113 894 0001. Referral fee payable for high claims only. Terms and conditions apply.
मुअज़्ज़ज़ ख़वातीनो हज़रात सुनो इम्तियाज सादिक फाउंडेशन अस्पताल की तामीर के सिलसिला में मसरूफ़ अमल है एक बार फिर आपके लिए ला रहे हैं £1 चैरिटी रैफल टिकट चाहे £1 में उम्रा करे या पाकिस्तान जाए या £500 कैश जीते टिकट फ्रॉम फीवर FM या सरदार आबद सईद से राब्ता करें 07883523423 याद रखिए कुरानदाजी 29 मार्च बरोज इतवार शाम 8 बजे रेडियो फीवर से बराह रास्त की जाएगी इसमें बढ़ चढ़कर हिस्सा लीजिए और दुख की इंसानियत की खिदमत कीजिए जज़ाकल्लाह खैर
I do.
And I do too.
We both agree that for any wedding, function, celebration or party, Premier Banqueting in Leeds is the venue to choose.
With 2 spacious suites, a welcome lobby and all the latest facilities, a stage, sound and lighting, air conditioning.
Full catering facilities, ample parking, a commercial kitchen, friendly, helpful staff.
And there's a bridal suite too.
Premier Banqueting now have outstanding all-inclusive wedding packages.
Affordable for ensuring your wedding's an enjoyable and stress-free experience.
Call Leeds 235 9290 to book today. Affordable and luxurious.
Fortune Cookie, Leeds' famous halal Chinese takeaway. Why not treat yourself to some of our amazing Chinese cuisine with fast delivery to Chapel Allerton, Moortown and Roundhay, and Hare Hills and Chapeltown. What's more, all our food is 100% halal. Take a look at some of the mouth-watering dishes online at ChineseTakeawayLeeds.com. Fortune Cookie, Raglan Road, Leeds 2. Open 7 days a week for your order. Phone Leeds 244 2228.
सोना कितना सोना है मीरपुर ज्वेलर्स का सोना है सुन जरा सुन क्या कहते हैं बुंदे हार और कंगन तू मेरा मीरपुर ज्वेलर्स नंबर 1 22 और 24 कैरेट में दुनिया भर के दिलकश डिजाइनों के जेवरात अपनी मर्जी से बनवाइए या फिर उनकी मरम्मत करवाइए हम 7 दिन खुले हैं मीरपुर ज्वेलर्स 10 हेयर हिल्स रोड लीड्स 8 टेलीफोन 216441
Fever 107.3 Leeds full-time Asian station.
Fever FM.
All the way.
Welcome back to number 1 community radio station, Radio Asian Fever 107.3, broadcasting, of course, from the heart of Leeds in Roundhay Road, across Leeds, across West Yorkshire, and globally on the internet on www.radioasianfever.co.uk. So wherever and however you're listening, you're very, very welcome. Back to the show, and it's a humdinger of a show today for you because we have the wonderful George Galloway in the studio with us.
Thank you.
Welcome back, and you're setting our text screens alight, George.
That's wonderful, yeah.
Yes.
In fact, they've been on from Mirpur, from Barcelona.
I know, a truly global audience.
Global,
yeah, global fandom right there. We've got Wahid Saab in Dewsbury flashing in for you, George. And George has actually kindly been reading out the flashes, and it went completely crazy.
Wahid Saab, Rashid, Shani, Raja Arshad Mahmood, Bawa Sadiq. My goodness,
he's going to love it.
Hundreds and hundreds.
They really are. Our listenership is very dedicated,
yeah.
And they do
Mashallah.
like to show that they're listening. But of course, there's a silent majority as well who are out there as well. And we,
Javed Bhai, Ali.
He's loving
wonderful.
it.
Absolutely wonderful.
Anyway, so
where were we?
We were talking about this little matter called the election that's coming up, the general election.
Yeah.
Now, 3 years ago, you kind of swept just complete craziness, wasn't it? You absolutely took Bradford by storm.
Wave, yeah.
And they called it the Bradford Spring at that time.
Yes. Well, I think I'm going before the electorate with 3 years of solid work. I talked about my constituency cases. When I arrived in Bradford, there was a giant hole in the ground that had been there for almost a decade, where Westfield was supposed to be. And now there's a Westfield quite soon to open. When I arrived, the Odeon was shrink-wrapped and falling down. And in fact, people wanted it to fall down to save money knocking it down. It's been saved and money found to develop it. And it has a great future as one of the twin icons of Bradford City Centre next to the Alhambra Theatre. Not many Bradford people know that, in fact, the Alhambra is actually Alhambra, which is, of course, the red palace in Andalusia at the height of its Islamic civilization.
Absolutely.
It's worthwhile Europeans remembering that actually the Muslims brought a very great many things to Europe. And the civilization in Andalusia that the Muslims brought was just on a stratospheric scale compared to what Europe was like at that time. And the Alhambra was just one of those. So there was a hole in the ground. There's now a Westfield. The Odeon was falling down. It's now been saved. They tried to close the National Media Museum. Even my enemies concede that I led the fight to save it, and we saved it. And in parenthesis, when I arrived, Bradford City Football Club was so low in the bottom division, it ran the risk of falling out altogether. And now, of course, we've been to Wembley twice, and it may be that we're on our way to Wembley again.
We're flying the flag.
I have nothing to do with that achievement, but it shows the difference in atmosphere that now exists in the city as compared to when I first won the seat 3 years ago. My hat is off to the manager, the owners, and the players of Bradford City Football Club.
No one can deny your passion for Bradford, George. And the thing is, you faced accusations, didn't you, of just using them to get in there?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm one of Bradford's greatest lovers. I absolutely love the city. I think it's a beautiful place, in a beautiful place, with the best buildings, the York stone, it's just a treasure. Yeah. And what it needs is better leadership. But I'll not go into that because I don't want to cause you problems dividing on a political basis. What I would say is this. If Leeds is West Berlin, with all that implies, riches, high-rise, economic power, political power, then Bradford is East Berlin. By which I mean, it's, yes, the poor relation, but it has a certain something. It has a charm, it has a presence that East Berlin has. And you know what? The coolest people in Berlin live in East Berlin. The artists, the poets, the creative people, the trendy people. They work in West Berlin, but they choose to live in East Berlin. So I'm here to say to the Leeds people, work in Leeds, yes, but live in Bradford.
See, I'm a follower of that policy already.
Yeah.
I can't afford the car insurance, George. Well, more than anything.
You know, that's one of my campaigns.
Yeah.
It is a kind of apartheid.
Yeah.
I told you earlier about my joint ownership of a back-to-back in Manningham. Well, the person with whom I had that joint ownership has bought a house in, let's call it, a more salubrious part of the Bradford district, namely Haworth. By moving from Manningham to Haworth, he has saved thousands on car insurance. Thousands. Wow. It's the same car, he's the same driver, with the same record, but because he moved to Haworth, he saved thousands.
His house is probably worth 4 times as much, but his car...
This is just unfair.
But he can't come to your surgery now.
It's totally unfair. But look, if there are bad drivers, punish the bad drivers. If there are people driving without insurance, punish them. Don't punish the rest of the people in the street. The rest of the people who live in that ward, that's unfair. That's collective punishment, which is illegal in international law. Don't get me started. I'm really worked up about this.
I want to talk to you actually about something to do with personalities in politics, because it seems to be so much now that your Boris Johnsons, your Farages, yourself, forgive me for putting you in that same group with them, but you are very vibrant personalities, all of you, and that's what people want to see at the moment. They're kind of fed up of the blandness and the hypocrisy of your kind of carbon copy Xerox types, because there is a sharp divide, isn't there?
There is.
And is this why people like Farage are rising?
Yes,
what is it?
Yes, undoubtedly. People are tired of, you're all too young to remember, but there used to be a thing called a speak your weight machine. You put a coin in and the machine spoke in a robotic voice what weight you were. It was usually bad news.
It was always wrong. It was always wrong.
Massively wrong.
But the robotic on-message pager poodle is the norm in British politics now, and people don't like it. So along comes Farage, whose ideas are odious, by the way, but whose personality is attractive because he's not like that. He smokes a fag, he drinks alcohol in public, doesn't hide it. He can talk the language of the common man and woman, and it's working. Now, it's easier for him because he's selling racist and chauvinistic, xenophobic, right-wing ideas to the simple-minded. I'm trying to sell something much more elevated than that we're all equal. Whatever colour we are, however we pray, wherever we came from, we're all equal. That's a harder sell. But the fact that I have had some success in doing it is, I think, because people, whether they like me or not, whether they are agreeing or voting for me or not, at least believe that I believe what I'm saying. I'm not saying it because I want something, because I don't want anything. I'm not saying it because a focus group told me it's popular. I'd be saying it whether it was popular or unpopular. If I was the last man standing saying it, I'd still be saying it. And I think that people are looking for that kind of a politician. And you're right that Boris Johnson or Ken Livingstone before him were big personalities, whereas actually we're led by quite small personalities now. Again, you're too young to remember, but when Harold Wilson, not far from here, born in Huddersfield, representing Liverpool, Houghton, 4 times the British Prime Minister, when he was the Prime Minister of Britain, he had a cabinet with at least 10 people in the cabinet who could have taken over as Prime Minister that afternoon. And they were all national figures. That's no longer the case. The opposition and the government are quite small personalities, and that's a problem.
It's a strange contradiction, though, isn't it? Because it shouldn't have to be about how controversial you can be or how firebrand or this, that and the other. You know, Ed Miliband's unpopular possibly because he seemed to perceive to not have that personality, yet, you know, I'm sure...
Well, you need to... I agree with you. There's no point in only having a personality. There's no point in, like Farage, being a personality standing for odious things. But I do wish that Ed Miliband had a bit more personality because I want him to win.
Yeah.
I want him to be...
In your heart, you're a Labour man, aren't you?
I've always been Labour. From my childhood until my death. It was the Labour Party that kicked me out. Mr. Tony Blair kicked me out, not me leaving them. I want Ed Miliband to win, so I wish I could transplant some more personality into him.
Yes, indeed. Well, Tony Blair was seen as having personality, and he was seen as having polish and charm,
I think
and all this gesticulation, which I'm doing as well.
Yeah, but
it's damaging, isn't it?
Yeah, polish is a different thing. Polish covers up things, the truth. What we're asking for is politicians to tell the truth and tell it in a language that people can understand and follow. That's what we're looking for.
Do you think we're undergoing a bit of a sea change in British politics simply because of that trust level was at an all-time low, the expenses scandal, all these things obviously contributed to that? Where do we go from here? Because if the best thing we can do is Farage, then surely we're in trouble.
We're in a big crisis. Now, we've been in a crisis before in this country. Hitler was at the Channel ports in the summer of 1940. We stood alone. Everyone else had capitulated, and we were in a big mess. But we found from amongst our number a leadership that knew what needed to be done and was able to rally the people behind what needed to be done. That's what we lack now. We have no Churchill, we have no Attlee, we have no leadership that knows what needs to be done, is ready to do it, and able to take the people with them. And we have a real crisis.
We don't really have anyone with real backbone, do we?
No, we have a group of people who I've described, I know this is an Asian station, so I won't say it in its most vulgar way, but we have a leadership in the country which is 2 cheeks of the same backside, and that's a real problem because that backside is too narrow to actually express what really needs to be done. It's let me put it more politely, it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum, with Nick Clegg Tweedledee and a half.
Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, how's that?
Okay, you said it.
Anyway, can I read some text messages? Because they're still flooding in.
Yes.
We could go on all night about these things. Good evening to yourself and George Galloway. This is Umar Hassan in Dewsbury. Lovely Dewsbury.
Excellent.
He says, I'm a really big admirer of George. Keep up the good work on Fever FM, and George, heaps of support for you, which is fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Please tell George he stands out head and shoulders above any other politician. That's number ending in 157. Please do put your names, guys, because I'm sure George would love to say hello to you in person.
Thank you.
Interesting. Ikhlaq wants to know, what are your views on leaving and staying in the European Union?
Leaving the European Union would be an unmitigated disaster for this country, and it's one of the disgraceful things that David Cameron has done in fear of Nigel Farage, in fear of UKIP. He has made the Conservatives more and more Europhobic. He has fed the ravenous beast of Europhobia. It's not that I think everything in the European Union is good, but nothing that's bad in the European Union will be made better by us leaving it or by spending the next 2 years in a referendum campaign on whether or not we should leave it. We would lose millions of jobs. We'd lose 60% of our market that we currently have. We would be really without a paddle up the creek. And so I beg you, I hate the European Parliament. I hate the European Central Bank. I hate the European Commission. But we have to change these things from inside, not by leaving them. Because they'll still exist if we leave, and they'll continue to be bad, and they'll continue to adversely affect us if we leave. So Britain has to make a decision. Are we a European country, or are we the 51st state of the United States of America that doesn't want us anyway? It's time to make a choice. We're a European people. Europe is just across the water. It's about time we got stuck in.
Yeah, embraced it. Absolutely. We've got another message here from Martin, who's listening, and he says, wise words from Gorgeous George. I wish more politicians would be like him. As a non-Muslim, I would like to say how impressed I am with the restraint the community has shown in the face of constant demonisation by the media, especially papers like Daily Mail. Strong stuff. Also, this is Tom in Stafford. Hello, he says, don't always agree with George, but he's always a great listen. What would George do to improve the image of politicians? Westminster clearly needs a shaking up, but I don't think Farage is the answer. I think we kind of covered that in that last...
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Although, let me just make the point about the fact that our Parliament, and indeed its upper reaches, has been exposed again just in the last week to be comprised of people who are constantly looking for a means of filling their pockets. It's staggering that two such senior politicians as Jack Straw and Malcolm Rifkind are ready to rent themselves out to any Chinese takeaway that comes along. It's nothing to do with politics. It's nothing to do with Parliament. It's just a business. Turned out to be a bogus one. A business that comes along and said, can we give you a lot of money? Will you sit on our board? And they say, well, I can't start before Friday. And how much is it going to be? This is deeply, deeply damaging to the British political system.
It is, but hasn't it always been there? You had cash for questions. You've got the lobbyists, they control much of the decision making.
I'm making a movie at the moment called The Killings of Tony Blair. You may have heard about
Multiple killings.
Yeah. The biggest crowdfunded film in history. It's coming out later this year. Now, in that film, we uncovered a comment made by Sir Anthony Eden, briefly the Prime Minister of Britain in the 1950s. When he had to step down, the next Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, asked him, what are you going to do now that you've stepped down as Prime Minister? And he said, and I quote, I've been offered a seat on the board of a bank, but I don't think it's quite right for a former British Prime Minister to sit on the board of a bank. That's how far standards have slipped. The Prime Minister in the 50s thinks it's demeaning to his previous office. Now, they're all out to fill their pockets with any company, any tyranny that's ready to pay them.
Integrity, isn't it?
It's very, very bad.
Do we need further guidance, legislation about issues around conflict of interest for MPs, for members of Parliament?
Yeah, we do. We should ban people from being directors, from being paid consultants, and we should say that if you're a lawyer, you can continue to do law and be in Parliament, but you can't become a property developer. You can't become a tout for a Chinese lobbying company. If you're a doctor, you continue being a doctor if you like, but you can't do these other things. There's a role. I myself am a political writer, a political broadcaster, but that's politics. I'm an MP and I'm a political broadcaster. I'm not an MP and a property developer. I'm not an MP and a man that makes toys to sell in the Far East. That becomes ridiculous. Then you have a conflict of interest.
Yeah, there's always been that kind of conflict, though, hasn't there, between politics and the people. That you don't go into politics to become popular. You go in there to do a job. So it's not.
Although some people are just in it just to be in it. Some people are in Parliament just to stay in Parliament.
And some have never done any other job.
Never done any other job, and nobody would give them another job. You see, if I left Parliament, I would be very, very much better off because the fact that I have to register every penny that I earn puts some TV companies off, I can assure you. But the fact that I'm in Parliament and doing political broadcasting is a perfect match for me. Now, I have no problem with people doing that, as I said, lawyers, doctors, whatever. But what they shouldn't be doing is using Parliament to get themselves more and more business interests, filling their pockets, looking to the future. You see, once upon a time, being a member of Parliament was quite an achievement in itself. Now, it's a stop on your resume, on your CV.
I did. Yeah.
On the way to your real job, which is making lots and lots of money.
Yeah.
And that's very bad.
I've got to ask you,
Yes.
do you regret the whole Celebrity Big Brother thing? Because you've been absolutely lambasted about it.
I don't really regret it. I wouldn't do it again, but I don't regret it. I did it with good intentions, which is, I think, what counts. I raised a lot of money for Palestinians in the Gaza Strip at a time when nobody else was raising money for them. In fact, I raised a record amount of money for them.
And do you think, is that the sticking point? Is that the real issue about the criticism, that it's...
No, most people, for some reason, are ready to watch well-known people make a fool of themselves on Red Nose Day or Children in Need. But when it comes to me, on Celebrity Big Brother, they have a particular problem with it.
And you're not the only politician who's done it. We had Nadine Dorries, was it, who was on Celebrity, on I'm a Celebrity, was it? And other people, so...
And I don't know how she'll get on in the election, but... I wouldn't do it again, but I don't regret it. I mean, sitting in the House of Commons for nearly 30 years is worse.
Listen, it's another thing to put on your CV, George, so it's fine.
On the way.
Anyway, I've got to read you this message because, allow us to stray into frivolity a little bit, George. We're talking about vegetable names.
Yeah.
Somebody's come up with Gobi Galloway.
George
Gobi
Galloway.
Cauliflower.
Gobi is cauliflower.
Yeah. Cauliflower is gobi.
We had one earlier on as well that suggested you might like to be the carrot, which in Urdu is Gaja.
Gaja.
So they're going for the...
Same initials, Gaja Galloway.
Yeah,
there
Gaja Galloway.
Just see alliteration. No, we don't want that. Let Graham Taylor and all those people deal with that. Hello, everyone, Fever. This is Hadia Aslam who's texted in, and this will strike a chord with you, George, because she wants to know, because this is what it's about, how can I arrange to come to see Mr. Galloway to discuss an important issue affecting Bradford's roads?
Well, first of all, you can see me any Saturday morning except tomorrow morning, because, as I said earlier, me and Russell Brand are confronting these anti-Muslim idiots in Newcastle tomorrow. But every other Saturday morning, from 11 until it finishes at 2 Grattan Road, BD1. But secondly, I have no power over roads. Of course, I can direct a boot up the backside of the people who do have power, but they don't have to listen to me. The council is responsible for roads.
Yeah.
It is quite important that people grasp the different responsibilities that people have.
Yeah.
I never turn anybody away if they come with a problem about the roads. I'll write to the guy that runs the roads. But he doesn't have to even read my letter, let alone do what I'm asking him to do.
Fantastic stuff. George, are you staying with us a little bit?
If you'll give me 5 minutes more, I'll take it. But then I have to take my family.
I know, I understand. I'll tell you what, we've just got to take a little break for adverts. After this, we'll wind up and we'll say our goodbyes, if that's okay. So just a little break then. These are some messages from our fantastic sponsors, without whom, of course, we wouldn't be here. So, we'll be right back.
FM. Iman Suhaib Webb is coming to a city near you to inspire, to enlighten, to remind you that even the smallest good deed can make a huge difference. So join this exciting world-renowned speaker in support of our Syria Not Forgotten appeal. Don't miss out. Book now. Tickets cost only £5. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
तमाम प्राइवेट हायर और हैकनी कैरेज ड्राइवर्स के लिए खुसूसी ऐलान मिस्टर कॉम्पेंसेटर अब £3,000 रेफरल फी आपको दे रहे हैं हैरान कुन है ना मिस्टर कॉम्पेंसेटर अब हर टैक्सी हायर क्लेम पर £3,000 रेफरल फी दे रहे हैं इसके अलावा सिर्फ 2 घंटों के अंदर अंदर मुतबादिल ब्रांड न्यू टैक्सी भी हासिल कीजिए लार्ज फ्लीट और प्रेस्टीज एंड 4x4 व्हीकल्स फॉर स्टैंडर्ड क्लेम्स 100% guaranteed compensation or 24/7 service please call now on 0113-894-0001 referral fee payable for higher claims only. Terms and conditions apply. Mr. Compensator.
हेलो, आपसे जरूरी बात करनी है।
बोलिए।
हेड टीचर ने कहा है आप अपने बच्चों को स्कूल से रिश्तेदारों को मिलाने नहीं ले जा सकते।
आप नहीं ले जा सकते? वो कहते हैं कि स्कूल से गैर हाजिरी की वजह से बच्चे अपनी तालीम में आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते।
अच्छा?
पिछले साल 2 हफ्तों के लिए मैं उनको ले गई थी, आकर मुझे बड़ी मुश्किल का सामना करना पड़ा।
वो क्यों?
अपनी तालीम में पीछे रहे, अहम टेस्ट मिस किए, दोस्तों से ना घुल मिलने की वजह से परेशानी और अकेलापन महसूस किया। हर बच्चे का 60 पाउंड जुर्माना देना पड़ा।
मतलब ये छुट्टियों तक इंतजार करना चाहिए।
ओ भराऊ का होया कियां पिटना है?
मरी गया वा भराऊ, टैक्सी भजी गई है, तू की दिसना कोई नहीं, हुन खर्चे को तू पूरे करसा ता पिटना।
ओ जे तुम्हारी गलती नहीं ना ते हुनी फास्ट ट्रैक सॉल्यूशन लिमिटेड वाले को जा, जिथु केस रिफेरल वाले की अप टू 3000 पाउंड ते तू की प्लेटेड कार लबसिया अप टू 1000 पाउंड पर्सनल इंजरी लोन भी लबी सकना है। ते प्राइवेट यूज कार वास्ते 500 पाउंड देने नहीं ते और सुन 100% कंपनसेशन डायरेक्ट कंपनी नी तरफ लबसिया और का लोन है
पता।
Fast Track Solutions Limited need new agents or referrals. Phone Shakil anytime on 07977 317760.
Are you looking for a job and need help? Don't know where to start? At the job shops, our qualified and experienced staff will help to look at your job choices and identify any training or work opportunities. Prepare your CV, support you with application forms, and offer advice and guidance to prepare you for interviews. We have 9 job shops across the city, including the Regional Centre, the Competence Centre, and Dewsbury Road One-Stop Centre. Call Debbie Smith on 07891 270 652 or visit leeds.gov.uk/job shop. Over the last year, we've helped nearly 4,000 people into work. Let us help you.
खुशबख्त, सख्त भूख लगी है।
सरताज, शॉपिंग के लिए जाना है।
चलो फिर एक तीर से 2 शिकार करते हैं। चलते हैं वीनस सुपरमार्केट और रेस्टोरेंट, जहां हर रोज ताजा हलाल गोश्त, बेकरी, बकलावा, सब्जियां और फल मिलते हैं। रेस्टोरेंट्स और टेक अवेज के लिए स्पेशल ऑफर्स भी देते हैं।
जी हां, जहां बेहतरीन तुर्किश, अरबिक, फारसी और कुर्दिश खाने मिलते हैं। शॉपिंग के बाद ताजा ग्रिल्ड फिश, शीश कबाब और तुर्किश पिज्जा वहां खाएं या घर ले जाएं। वीनस सुपरमार्केट एंड रेस्टोरेंट, 67 Domestic Street, Holbeck, Leeds 11. Open 7 days a week till 9 p.m. Telephone 234 1511.
चंद भाई क्या हो गया? सर से पांव तक पट्टियां नजर आ रही है।
हवलदार जी कुछ ना पूछो, मारी गड्डी ना एक्सीडेंट हो गया, बड़ी डाटी लगी है। मारी गलती भी नहीं सी। हुन समझ नहीं अचनी केड़े पासे जाऊं ते मंजी कुथे डाऊं।
मंजी की जान छड्डो और सीधे तीर नॉर्थ वन सोलिसिटर के चौधरी शहजाद साहब को पकड़ो, जो कि 100% कंपनसेशन दिलाते हैं, माहिर हैं रोड एक्सीडेंट के, पर्सनल इंजरी क्लेम के, इमिग्रेशन का मसला हो या कोई भी बड़ा कानूनी मसला हो।
Call Leeds 249 8478 or visit North One Solicitors, 240 Roundhay Road, Leeds.
अरे ओ रामगढ़ के वासियों, मैं पूछता हूँ कौन से शहर में ऐसी सुपरमार्केट है जो शॉपिंग के लायक हो? बोल संबा, कौन सी?
सरदार, शॉपिंग करनी है तो सिर्फ अबू बकर सुपरमार्केट में शॉपिंग करो। ये लीड्स में सबसे बड़ी रिटेल और होलसेल दुकान है। इनका खाना इंडिया, पाकिस्तान, बांग्लादेश और दीगर दुनिया के मुल्कों से आता है। हर रोज जबरदस्त स्पेशल ऑफर्स मिलते हैं और आपको पता है कि एक छत के नीचे सब कुछ मिलता है। हलाल चिकन, मीट, चावल, दाल, आटा, मसाला, बंगाली मच्छी, और ये भी सुना है कि ये टेक अवे और रेस्टोरेंट्स के लिए स्पेशल ऑफर्स भी करते हैं।
माँ कसम, चुन चुन के वहाँ शॉपिंग करेंगे हम, चुन चुन के। अबू बकर सुपरमार्केट, 215 Roundhay Road, Leeds 8 and 37 Queens Road, Leeds 6. Also opening soon on Dewsbury Road, Leeds 11.
The UK's #1 community station. This is Fever FM.
Welcome back to your #1 community radio station, Radio Asian Fever, of course, broadcasting from the heart of Leeds. And George Galloway is still with us. George, been a fascinating discussion. And unfortunately, we've got to say goodbye to you in a bit. You've got to shoot off.
I must say I'm really impressed. I'm impressed by the station. I'm impressed by this show. The fact that you're going now on television online, I think from Sunday. This is fantastic. This deserves the kind of high reputation that it definitely has. And we've reached Barcelona tonight. We're being listened to in Mirpur. And certainly across half of Bradford.
We do have a regular listener in South Korea.
Really? We do.
We do have some reach.
We have listeners in Canada, the States, Pakistan, India, and all over.
How wonderful.
So we do have quite
the fever has spread far and wide.
Really impressed, and I'm sorry to leave you, but my friends are with me and my family are with me, and none of them have eaten, even lunch.
So, my goodness me.
So I need to take them to the restaurant across the road.
Well,
so
the next time you visit, George, the little one has to come on air as well. I think there's a little talent there as well.
I think,
a little mini firebrand.
Talent, yes. But if you've got one more question, I'll take it.
Yeah, it was just wanting to, I think, of the current issues that we talk about and we see, certainly for me, I've been born and brought up in the UK. I work in an equality field, but I have a question around, and I have lots of, sort of like unspoken feelings around freedom of speech. Now, more recently, we've seen freedom of speech play out on the issue of the cartoons and on many other issues. I mean, when I was at college, we led demonstrations on, against the publishing of the satanic verses and so on and so forth. But are we in a place where freedom of speech is more freer for some than others?
Yes. I mean, first of all, there is no absolute freedom of speech.
Yeah.
We're on the radio now. Were we to libel someone, then the owner of the station would be responsible in front of the courts. Were we to say anything which was likely to incite a breach of the peace or religious hatred or racial hatred,
there are laws.
We would rightly be in court. And of course, if I went to the local cinema and waited till it got dark and shouted out, "Fire!" and there was a panic and a stampede, and people were hurt, my freedom to shout fire would soon be trumped, quite rightly, by the freedom of people in the cinema not to be injured, and perhaps worse, by my irresponsible shouting out of the word fire. So there are already limits to freedom of speech. And as we know very well, all of us, the freedom to insult Islam is not actually reciprocated in all other cases. In France, for example, where Charlie Hebdo made a career and a considerable fortune out of insulting Islam and its prophet and so on, it is illegal on punishment of imprisonment to deny the Holocaust. Now, I'm one of those who agrees with that. I wish it was illegal to deny the Holocaust here in Britain. It isn't, but it is in France. Because to deny the mass suffering and mass murder of Jews in the Holocaust is too hurtful to Jewish people in France, and therefore it's a criminal offence, and I support that. But if it's wrong on the point of imprisonment to gratuitously hurt Jewish people in France, why is it legal, indeed something that we should celebrate, the right to hurt Muslims in France? There are 8.5 million Muslims in France. Do their feelings mean nothing? So, I say what I said on the steps of City Hall in Bradford on the first weekend after the mass murder in Paris. No one should be hurt, let alone killed, for anything that they say or write or draw. That's an absolute. No one should be hurt for anything that they draw, say, or write. But at the same time, a religion which is followed by billions of people in the world has the right to say, why would you want to insult our prophet? Is it for profit? Or is it for some malign political, philosophical reason? Are you trying to cause trouble? As the Pope himself said, the Pope in Rome, if you come up and insult my mother, expect trouble. That's just obvious common sense. Just like you wouldn't shout fire in a darkened cinema. Why would you go out of your way to offend, upset billions of religious believers by caricaturing their prophet in obscene ways? By the way, I never like this use of the word depiction. It was the depiction of the prophet that was the problem. Actually, it was the caricaturing in obscene and pornographic ways of the prophet that was the problem. So there are limits to freedom of speech, and my freedom of speech is being curtailed by my wife gesticulating through the window now if you'll forgive me, and if your listeners will forgive me. It's been a privilege to be with you.
Listen, it's been such a pleasure to have you on air. It's been one of the best shows, I think, that we've certainly been able to do. Our responses from our listeners reflect that in the text messages that they've been flooding in since you've been speaking on air. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We wish you all the very best for the forthcoming election and for the rally in Newcastle tomorrow with Russell Brand.
And don't forget my launch, Lala's, 7 p.m. in Toller Lane, Bradford. You're in Bradford. We'll be expecting to see you there.
The main thing is keep speaking the truth, keep representing.
As long as God gives me breath.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and enjoy the food, the well-earned meal.
Thanks so much.
On the launch of your film, we'd like to invite you to come back.
Yeah, sure. And you'll get the tickets for the red carpet, because the world premiere will be, inshallah, in Bradford.
Fantastic. George, have a safe journey back, and thank you very much. We're going to play this next song as we wind down the show.